the 19th installment of the Cardamom Seminar Series, and we're very glad to have Caoimhín Ó Donnaíle with us. Is it Ó Donnaíle, or how we pronounce it? Ó Donnaíle?
Ó Donnaíle, or something like that, they say in Donegal.
Ó Donnaíle, yeah. Who is going to talk about his amazing resource on Proto-Indo-European, an Indo-European database of cognate words. And so Caoimhín is based on the Isle of Skye and works at Southall Ostig, Scotland's Gaelic medium college on the island. And he's very interested in building resources for Gaelic and other languages, so particularly focusing on dictionaries and lexical resources. And he has taught at that college, I believe, for nearly 30 years. Is that right?
Yeah.
Mainly computing.
And then genealogy.
So, yeah.
Family tree.
And genealogy. Family trees. Okay, yeah. Very good. Okay. Well, the floor is all yours.
Okay.
And thanks for. Oh yeah, I should probably add that what we would like to do in this meeting is maybe also have a brief chat at the end and discussion on maybe 20 minutes or so on when we can maybe discuss the data structure that you explained to us, and maybe some of us have some ideas or some feedback in that regard. So yeah. So
okay.
Go ahead.
I will now attempt to share screen and share the right screen. Desktop 2, share, and now can you see just something saying Bunadas, and does that look okay to you?
Yeah, it's visible.
Right, okay, right. I'm going to alternate in this seminar between live demonstration over here, and instead of a slideshow, I've just prepared a long web page, which I'll scroll down. So some notes. First of all, this is where it is. And if you've got the luxury of 2 screens, you can try things out in the other screen as I'm speaking. You'll see that's the Solmor Ostig, which is part of the University of the Highlands and Islands Academic United Kingdom. Chenga, where I've got some language resources. Bunadas. You'll see after the www, you'll see a 3 coming in, but just ignore that. www3 is my own server, www is the college official server, but the 3 comes and goes as required. Bunadas is a network database. This is the general idea of how it works. You might have a Scottish Gaelic word related to an Irish Gaelic word, related to a Manx Gaelic word. So somebody has compiled a cluster of Gaelic cognates. Maybe somebody in Ireland has interested in Welsh has compiled a list of Irish Welsh words, and somebody in Wales interested in Brythonic languages has gathered together some Cornish and Breton cognates. But by going from the Scottish Gaelic word to this cluster, to the Irish word, to this pair, to the Welsh word, to this cluster, to the Breton, you've got a link between the Scottish Gaelic and the Breton. Or here's a link within languages, Scottish Gaelic to another Scottish Gaelic word, which came from Norse, which is Germanic, which is related to English, and maybe this came from Latin. That's the general picture. So the links between words are mediated by clusters. You go from word to cluster to word to cluster to which has got its advantages and disadvantages, but theoretically it is neither here nor there. So that's the general picture. Now I gave if we go to the home page here, I gave a seminar on this to the Celtic Linguistics group in Arizona just 3 months ago, which you can watch here.
Component is also
right out of there. And I'm not going to repeat myself, so I'm going to go rather quickly here through rather than being slow and didactic, I'm going to assume that you're all big linguistic data geeks and try and leave enough time to talk about the nitty-gritty, agonize out loud about the structure of things and how things might be and whatnot. So I'll just go very quickly through things. One thing, by the way, I'm logged in, which means there's more clutter on the screen. If you go to this page, you won't see these checks, and especially you won't see editing facilities for words. If you want to see the editing facilities, you can go to the bottom left and click Bun Test, which gives you access to a copy of the database, and you can change things and mess about as much as you like without doing any harm. Back to Bunadas. Right, so it's a bit more cluttered than what you'll see. Right, now rather than being slow and didactic, I'm going to jump at the deep end, and maybe somebody like Doris could give me an Irish word, any Irish word. Do you want to jump in with an Irish word?
Fear.
F-E-A-R, a man. Like that?
Yeah.
Okay. Right, so that's a search. You've got wildcard searching. To go back again, if you click find a word, you get some more facilities. But anyway, far. Right. There's a bit of duplication here because I got a big donation of Irish Manx links from Kevin Scannell, and they're in red, so ignore them for the... Oh, fair is also a verb. So I'm just using this to illustrate some principles. Disambiguators. Bunadas works by numbers. Every word has a number. Unlike Wikidata, I'm going to talk a bit about Wikidata and how Bunadas is different from Wikidata. Wikidata's got great information and terrible structure from a computing point of view. Bunadas works by numbers, but for human, to help humans, you can have a little disambiguator, which can be anything, which is shown up here in the top right. You can barely read it, but it doesn't matter. So there we are, fair man. And it's in a group with fair, or well, far is what you would say in Irish Gaelic. Fair is what you would say in Scottish Gaelic, fair in Manx, and it comes from the Old Irish fair. And I'll ignore that group. We could click in the Old Irish, and that comes from, is it Proto-Celtic Wiros, and you could click in that and go further back. But what you normally do when you want to explore a word, let's go to fair, far again, and click neighbourhood. We can let the computer do the running around. And right, here's the, so far, Irish Gaelic. Celtic language, colour coding's quite important for usability. Celtic languages in green, Romance languages virile, Romance languages in red, Germanic languages, it went from Latin to English, virile, and so on. Back to Indo-European. Now, as I go from Indo-European is grey, wishy-washy, and as you go to the more modern languages, you get the colours get more defined. That helps you find your place. Right, so we've got a tree here. If I go to what you would normally do is you go straight to the Proto-Indo-European root, if you can spot it, and then click neighbourhood again, and then we get a nice rooted tree. Okay. And Manx, if you hover over words, you get the meaning with a bit of luck. So we've got a Manx word, GV, ability means which maybe, probability 0.7. So it has the concept of probabilities in there. And here's something I do sometimes is I make up words by using pluses. I wonder where that comes from. If I click Dagos, Eros. Well, I could explore around there. Anyway, that's a start. Do you want to give me another word, Irish word, Doris? We'll try it again. Can't hear you.
Bradon.
Sorry, say it again.
That's probably a bad example. Bradon for salmon.
Okay, well, let's try it. I'll deliberately, no, I won't. I'll Bradon with an accent. Okay, so there we have it. Bradon, and click neighborhood. My server's been a little bit slow. Oh, right. So we haven't got back to Proto-Indo-European. We've got to brat, plundering and whatnot. So it may have come from a word meaning plundering. Spoil. So, right. Okay. These are lexically similar words. This has nothing to do with the actual network, but it's the computer's just looking at what words are written like other words, which can be very useful. Something you can do is drag words from place to place. If I want to, this would be a silly thing to do, but if I wanted to put that word in this group, there it is, which can be great. I'll delete it again before it puts me wrong. Right, so that's how things work. Right. If we go way back, where did all this come from? Way back in 2003, I had a thing called the Celtic Cognates database, or in Gaelic, Storachel Cogaivil Celtic. And it should have looked like this. This is the kind of table you get in books about Celtic languages that shows you that they're all related to one another. The Irish word Awin is related to the Welsh word Avon, which is the River Avon in English and Cornish. And Anyam in Irish is Enw in Welsh. That's how things should have looked like. This is how they actually did look like in the database. Where it came about because we had a student from Wales who was very good and hardworking and got interested in links between Scottish Gaelic and Welsh, and went through a Welsh dictionary and compiled 1,000 of them. And I put them in a database and was very pleased. And so she went through a Cornish dictionary. She had a sister in Cornwall and got links there, and then went through a Breton dictionary. So we had lots of Gaelic to Brythonic links. And then I got a donation of 1,000 Manx words and researched them and linked them to Scottish Gaelic words. But putting the two together was impossible. And a rectangular structure just doesn't work. You've far too many columns for different languages. One word in Scottish Gaelic doesn't match to one word in Irish Gaelic. For example, in Munster is not Awin, it's Oa is what they say, I think. So you had commas and slashes and all sorts of things. It didn't work. So I went on to network structure like this, words related to other words, and then at that stage I was better at programming, and the computer could follow the links, as you've seen. Let's go back a bit, and here's a tree structure, which is a particular kind of network. Networks can have cycles in them, go around in a circle. Trees, you don't. You can have a rooted tree with directionality, or an unrooted tree where you can start anywhere. Now, the important thing for Bunadas, although we saw trees, Bunadas doesn't contain any trees, it's just a network, and the trees are calculated in the fly. So this is maybe who's related to who. People, Jen knows, Afrik knows, Marco knows, Johan, and you've maybe heard the kind of claim that everybody, is it 7 degrees of separation? He takes you from anybody in the world to anybody else in the world. Like to Donald Trump, for example. Well, I know somebody at the college who's from Lewis and who knows Donald Trump's first cousin, so I'm 3 degrees away from Donald Trump. So this is a minimal spanning tree starting with Jen. If you started, there's no link going from Marco to Herbert. If you started minimal spanning tree starting with Marco, you would get a different tree. So I programmed that. Finally, after many years, got round and tried putting it into a network. And it went wrong because sometimes, well, you've got words like internet, which is inter and net, or a claymore is a big sword, claio more. And the Gaelic word chowlach is chach slua. It's the crowd, the servants, the people in the house. But if you've got the word chowlach linked to chach and linked to slua, then you could make a false connection between chach and slua and go all wrong. So I had to bring in the concept of these things, meaning a word is a part of another word. And that kind of worked, but you had to be careful with it. If we go to the database and let's put in chach, neighborhood. Let's put in the European cover, so it comes from the roof of the house. That is really to detach and all that. Now, if we won't see chowlach down there, I have to switch on show super elements. And then, so we now get Bahach is a buyer, a cow house. And here we have Tego Slugom, which Tylee in Welsh. Where is our chowlach? It's there somewhere. Anyway, you can switch on. That's just to show you can show super. You've got tick boxes here for showing super elements, show sub elements, and with a bit of shading here to kind of warn you. By the way, Bunadas is multilingual. If you want to work Trivan na Gaeilge, Coirsnacht instead of neighbourhood, agus Tashbun for Virina, agus si vous, il fonctionne aussi en français, avoisinant, et auf Deutsch. And if anybody wants to help translate this, I'd be very glad of. There's a couple of hundred strings if anybody wants to help me provide interfaces in other languages. The 3 main languages I could do with is Welsh and Spanish. They're very incomplete, and Russian, which would be a gateway to lots of Asian languages. They're quite good in linguistics, in etymology. Right, back to English. That was just by the way. Okay, so we can switch on and switch off super elements, but we have to be careful with these things. And I went wrong at first. This is kind of conceptual. This is Scottish Gaelic, but you'll recognise the words. Príomhrad is the main road. Príomh is prime main. Príomh Minister is the Prime Minister. And if you've switched on sub-elements, switched on super elements, you can go from Príomhrad to Príomh Minister. They both contain Príomh, they are related. You can even go up further to Yes Príomh Minister, which is Deputy Prime Minister. But, and this is where I went wrong at first, you can't, you can go down and up, but even if you've switched on going down, switched on going up, you can't go up and then back down again. Otherwise you would make false connections. So that's a a rule in the programming. Okay, so I implemented that rule, and I thought this is great. It's good for all these suffixes and prefixes and whatnot, which have an interesting etymology of their own. And I incorporated them, and the thing got a total mess because it wasn't making connections because they weren't totally connected. So this is a bit schematic, artificial. Going to the plural as if it was a different word, but pre-of-rad, we're going up to pre-of-rogen, down to up to pre-of-vinister, down to pre-of-vinister, and even though a sort of band going down if you went up, this is okay because basically these are the same words. We've got lax equivalents, and that's the way we normally work. So I had to invent this symbol. And so now we've got 3 symbols altogether. This is how words can be made up. You can have a word with a suffix, which is shown as a tiny bit of the word. And then this is as good as the basically equivalent to the whole word. You can have any number of suffixes, or you can have significant components like clay, more, or you can have many significant components, and it doesn't matter how many prefixes and suffixes and infixes, but if you have one of these, then you can't have any of those. So you have to be disciplined about it. And you can imagine if you had sometimes there's a question about how you'd split a word up. Is it a main, like pre-of-vinister, prime minister, is that 2 equal components, pre-of and vinister, or is it the pre-of just a kind of prefix? So pre-of would be a minor bit and the minister is the main part of pre-of-vinister, or are they kind of equal status? And you can imagine if people are editing, at the moment Bunadas has only one editor, me, but I've got visions of it spreading out and being a useful facility or something like it being useful for worldwide. If somebody in France if you had a English compound word and you split it up like this, and meanwhile somebody in France had the French equivalents and split it up like that, and things could start going wrong, or in Russia or something like that. So we need to be a bit disciplined about things. Right. Before I go any further, let's go back home. You can go home by either clicking on this or clicking on Bunadas. And what have we got in Bunadas at the moment? Well, it's all done by hand. It's not coming automatically from anywhere. So it's limited what we have. And this is the language coverage at the moment. The bolder and the bigger, the more words I have. So Old Irish, I have 16,000 words. Modern Irish, I've got something the same. Scottish Gaelic, I've only got 3,500, which is a bit shameful. Welsh, 4,500. Plenty Proto-Celtic, Proto-Germanic. I don't do Proto-Italic, just go straight to Italian. Proto-Slavic, I don't, and I've got Lithuanian as a sample Baltic. I don't have Proto-Baltic Slavic. I've got Greek. I don't have Indo-Iranian languages. I don't have enough expertise for that, even though they would be very interesting. No Armenian, Albanian or anything. So this is the kind of coverage at the moment, which is a lot of emphasis on Celtic, English, 5,000, Old English, French, which I kind of know, and Old French, quite a lot of German, well, fair bit, Proto-Germanic, because English came from Proto-Germanic mostly. Middle Irish, I don't distinguish Middle Irish and Old Irish like I should. I've only got 92 Middle Irish words. basically, Shen Goidel means anything in Dil, which is really not just Old Irish, it's Old Irish, Middle Irish, and a bit of early modern Irish. I know that's wrong, but I don't have the expertise and good enough data to do something about it at the moment. Sometimes when Dill says English loan word, I don't derive it from English because I know that would be really silly. I go back to the Middle English or something like that. I tend to avoid Middle English a bit because the spelling system is a mess. So that's kind of the coverage of you. So you see that, where was it? There's the list of languages, or you can click word count to see the numbers. Let's go back. So as not to be Anglo-centric, I say dansk instead of Danish. I say Shen Goidelk instead of Ancien Irlandais or Alt Irish. So I'm using retro endonyms for the names of languages, but I haven't gone back to Proto-Celtic and whatnot. Right. Maybe we could have a little look at the actual databases. Where are we? Sorry. Right. These are the tables in the Bunadas. Behind things, we've got a MySQL database with sort of three main tables. The main one is Bunef, which is the focal, the words, and Bund is the drongen, the groups, the clusters, and a link table to link the two together. We've got various additional word information tables with additional information on words. That's about it. And the whole thing is pretty small, 65 megabytes. Bunef, if I browse it. So everything works by numbers. F is the ID for the word. T is the language code. That's the word itself. For case independent, like accent independent searching, I've got a copy of the grammar. This is the disambiguation when it's required. A glossary, which is usually in English, but sometimes I precede it with FR or something like that. If it's in French, or ILA if it's in Latin, you can have notes. My field names are in Old Irish, just to be language independent, and this is just some logging information. So that's the Bunef table, the words. If I go to Bundi, it's got even less information. That's the groups. It's basically just a list of numbers, group numbers. It's got slight information as to where it came from. Usually it's Wiktionary. And here's the link table linking the two together, the D and the F. And it's got a distance, right? In the beginning, I used to have all the words in the cluster one step away from the cluster itself. And then I found it's better to, if I can, to have a one word distinguished. This gives things a little bit of directionality, even though it's just a non-directional network really. But 0 is, if the word's derived from Old Irish, then the Old Irish, if you use Scottish Gaelic, Irish Gaelic, Manx derived from Old Irish, then the Old Irish gets a 0. And if words are compounds, then the base word gets a 0. This is the code for the greater than, less than, and whatnot. And I'd introduce probabilities, and because sometimes you're not certain about things, and kind of arbitrary rule, if you're, when it's constructing these trees, when it goes from word to word, if it multiplies the probabilities, and if you get below 0.5, it doesn't show it. And these are alternate spellings, and then we've got references and dictionary references, which is usually linking Old Irish words to the number in DIL, Dictionary of the Irish Language. Bunti is a list of languages, so this is the languages that are allowed at the moment and their names. And this is a kind of hierarchy which is based on the linguist list composite tree, which was a great system, and it's unfortunately sort of died since somebody retired. So that gives us a kind of hierarchy which I use to order the words, which is quite important. And the linguist list didn't have an ordering within branches, so I introduced A's and B's and whatnot to order things. And I put Celtic first of all at the top of the list. So that's a quick look at the database. Right back here. Right. So sometimes mistakes show up, and just came across this one 2 days ago, and I deliberately left things. So this is a tree coming from the Proto-Indo-European word 10, which means to stretch, extend. Well, 10, extend itself has 10 in it, tenuous. And if we go down here, what is this? This is another Proto-Indo-European root cropping up. And the culprit seems to be Proto-Celtic Tandman, which gave Old Irish Chenam, which is, so there's something wrong here. So you get a quick visual report when things are wrong. I used to drop everything and root things like this out, and now I'm a bit more leisurely and take my time. But yeah, you want to put things like that right. Let's go back. Now, this isn't exactly going wrong, but this is a bit pathological. Here's a Proto-Indo-European work, to care, I have no idea how to pronounce it, cultivate, live and whatnot, which gave words for badger, Teig in Irish, Dachs in German. Dachshund is a badger dog, presumably because badgers make homes and whatnot. Textile, which is something kind of homely. And so you can kind of see the T is mostly around. But if we go to Latin, the T is turned to S here, and then it's got a prefix here, and it's totally disappeared. And we get the English word compose, which is step by step. You can see all how it comes from decay, but it's not really. Or here's another pathological one. We've got a Proto-Indo-European word, ged or something like that, find, to hold, which gave the English word get. Nothing wrong with that. You can see the Germanic getano or something, Proto-Germanic. That's all okay. But we go to Latin, we've got the geds turned to hend, prehensive, something prehensive. Tail is a tail that can hold things. But then we've got to prison, the English word prison. Right, we're a long way away from here. That's kind of pathological, but fortunately it doesn't happen very often. So that's just to illustrate how things can go wrong a little bit. When we're doing this kind of work, Bunadas is based on headwords. It doesn't get it. Wiktionary is kind of polluted, I would say, with loads of word forms. I'm clicking in links and thinking they're going somewhere sensible, and it's just going to the ablative of some Latin word or something like that. Bunadas works with headwords, but not dictionary headwords, but sometimes you have to allow suppletive forms. So it's not all entirely the main infinite. And you have to be consistent about how you, especially with verbs, what you're going to use So this is part of the work of Bunadas, is organising things. And basically, I'm going by Wiktionary. So for Greek, I use the first singular form of the verbs. Latin, amo, I love first singular. French uses the infinitive, aimer, so er, which is, the Wiktionary will tell you is related to the Latin infinitive, but I go straight to the amo. German, infinitive. Welsh, infinitive or verbal noun or whatever it is. In Old Irish, the convention is to use the third singular. In Irish, I've just been spent days converting from there's the reason I've got so many Old Irish and Old Irish words is there's a wonderful De Valdrighe went through the Dictionary of the Irish Language, all 42,000 words, and compiled an Index Nua Gaeilge done Dictionary of the Irish Language with 15,000 word pairs or something like that. And he used the third singular, whereas Wiktionary and most people use the imperative. So I've converted from the third singular to the imperative. Dineen uses the first singular. English Irish Dictionary, first singular. Folklore Gaeilge Béarla uses the imperative, and this Index Nua Gaeilge, as I said, use the third singular. So you need some consistency with in each language. Spelling standards, Scottish Gaelic, I like the acutes, even though they were being abolished with the spelling reform in the 1980s. So I use Mfachler beg spelling rather than the rules, the Goch rules or Dwelly. Old Irish, I'm using hyphens because most of it came from the Index Nua Gaeilge, which came from Dill. Wiktionary uses middle dots for between verb prefixes and the main part of the verb. And at some stage, I'll change to my hyphens to middle dots. For Irish, I'm sticking to the Caoimhín, but I really like, well, I'd like to include Dineen, which is a wonderful dictionary. By the way, something I forgot to mention. Let's go to Teach, Irish Gaelic word, Teach. Up here, we have links to Wiktionary or to dictionaries. I'll do right click, open a new tab. And we've gone to the last Irish English dictionary I used, which has got Teach, habitation, dwelling and whatnot. But we've got access to loads of dictionaries here. If I click this one, this is Dineen's dictionary via the Web Archive, which is a wonderful dictionary. It's unfortunately went out of use with the Caoimhín and the doing away with the Clo Gaelic. So there we have Teach, and we can get more information on Teach. Right, put that away. And back to where I was. No, where was I? Right, so I would like to somehow bring in Dineen's spelling. I'm not sure how to do it. I've got toying with the idea that Bunadas should have acquired the concept of alternate spelling systems. I don't have any Serbian at the moment, no Dutch either, Doris, sorry. Must get around to it sometime. If we included Serbian, we might want both the Cyrillic and the Latin spelling, and there's lots of languages like that. So that's another thought. Right, it would be nice to include lots more languages, but I would run out of colours. Bunadas. And if I was going to include more languages, I would really need a colour editor. So I need to write one of them. And it would be nice to have some structuring within languages. The language codes in Bunadas are atomic. It doesn't really understand Celtic languages to any extent, but it would be nice as our trees get more and more and more words, hopefully, there'll be more and more need to filter out the things we don't want. And here's something I forgot to mention. If we go to do our Let's go to far this time. Man, get a tree, and go to the Proto-Indo-European, and come on, tree again. Something I forgot to mention is, say you're not interested in Celtic languages, there's an awful lot in here. You can just click on that and it collapses that whole branch. So you can click here, collapsed, back again, collapse. That's very useful indeed. But as well as that, as we get more and more words here, hopefully, we'll want better filtering facilities, and it would be nice to be able to filter out all Baltic Slavic languages, for example, or all, when we get Indic languages, it would be nice to filter them out, because I won't even be able to read the Devanagari. It would be nice to have place names. I'm thinking out loud here, place names, family names, species names, but then that increases the clutter. They're a bit problematic as to what language tag you give them, and we'd need filtering facilities for there. Right, I'm finishing off here. Wiktionary, wonderful information, improving all the time, but the structure is dreadful. This is the English word bole, which is related to the Old Irish word beal, for a tree, comes from, it'll tell you here, from Middle English bolle, from Old Norse boller. But if to go back further, we can click on Old Norse boller, and it tells us that this is from Proto-Indo-European behel, or however we pronounce it. But if we click on that, this is the problem with Wiktionary. It's got a overloading, and so there are loads of bells. There's bell to bellow, sound, speak, and there's another root, bell, shiny white, so maybe it means a shiny white trunk of a birch tree or something like that, maybe not. Bell to blow up, trunk of a tree swollen up like other tree-like things. Or what else have we got? Bell, henbane, not likely. So which one does it come from? Who knows? By chance, I clicked on the Swedish bal, which actually tells us from Proto-Indo-European bell. Oh, no, that's the wrong one. There's homographs in Swedish as well. Old Norse boller, so we've got ball in Swedish from Old Norse boller, came from bell to swell up. So now we know. But I'm going back. Yeah, the information in Wiktionary is great, but harvesting it automatically is practically impossible because of the lack of structure, it's all lexical links rather than numeric links. Here are various people that have attempted to do it. Rabbitique, you can try it yourself, but I'm kind of running out of time. Goes so far, not too interesting. Etymologique was sort of better. It went backwards, but not sideways, but it's not working today. Maybe it stopped working altogether. There's a chap called Big Data Guy, now at the Humboldt University in Germany near Berlin, who's got an etymological word net with loads of information. That's very interesting. But in the end, there's where it'll all come from. We've got the English, I said Wiktionary, but it's when I say Wiktionary, I'm using the English Wiktionary. But there's also the Russian Wiktionary, ru.wiktionary.org, which has got loads of etymological information in it. The French one's quite good for etymological information. Breton tends to have links with Gaulish. So there are various Wiktionaries, and they're all duplicating their effort. And all of these things should come from something that works by numbers and is structured. And there is something now coming, lexicographic Wikidata, and you can search it with Ordia. but it's not that organized. Here's the word palmist, and it says it's a compound of palm and ist, but it doesn't have any concept of major component and tiny component suffix. So it's where I was a long time ago with Bunadas, and there's no proper disambiguation. Ballpoint pen, it says comes from pen, but it doesn't tell you at all whether it's a pen meaning a writing implement or a pen meaning an enclosure for livestock. And they're both under L533, totally different words. Sometimes it does that, sometimes it doesn't. The words tear and tear, for example, they're written the same, but they do have different L numbers. So we're not there yet, but that's in a few years' time, but it's years in coming, I think. There'll be some big automatic version of Bunadas, and it'll all come from lexicographic Wikidata, but we're not there yet. Okay, I'll stop. Sorry if went a bit longer than I intended. Oh, I've lost everybody. Right. Okay, any questions or ideas or comments?
Yeah. Thank you very much for your talk. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, just have a small question about the lexical similarity section. So how did you compute it, or just where does it come from?
Lexical similarity? What did you mean?
Yeah, when you showed the tree of the related words, there was a small section at the bottom called lexical similarity.
Oh, right. That's just that's just purely spelling, based on spelling. It's just the computer.
Oh, okay, all right. So it's spelling similarity rather than
that's
something.
all it is. So it's nothing really to do with the database. It can be useful in showing things up that haven't included in the database yet. It's also very useful as an editor because you can drag and drop things from there into the groups. So it's quite useful, but it's not part of the real structure.
No, my question was more about if it is semantic similarity or just the spelling.
Just pure
just the spelling.
Yeah, that's all.
Yeah, thanks very much.
I think Elena has a question in the chat.
Hi, thank you very much. It was very interesting. I might have not understood it because I haven't worked with that kind of data for a while, but back in Moscow, I was slightly participating in the Tower of Babel International Etymological Database project, which might be interesting to show if you haven't, because that's a very carefully linguistically curated etymological database, the Tower of Babel. And I do remember that there was a huge issue how you differentiate between cognates and loan words. And my question is, how do you work with loan words in your database?
I was going to say something about that. I just include them. If an old Irish word came from Latin rather than Proto-Celtic, I just link it to the Latin. So I don't have any concept of loan or to Bunadas, it's all the same. If we had more detail and we were following sound laws, and Bunadas doesn't know about sound laws at all, at some stage, maybe in the distant future, it would be nice to have a version that knew about sound laws, and then it would be important whether, well, quite in French, for example, quite often you get words that have come through Old French and through the Romance Vulgar Latin route, and other ones that have been learned imports straight from Latin, and they've bypassed the sound changes in Proto-Romance Vulgar Latin. But no, Bunadas doesn't know about that at all. So yeah, it just links to it, I'm afraid.
Right, thank you.
I'm writing my email address in the chat. I'd be very glad to get help with Russian. There's it's a home-baked language interface system, Smotter SMO translation system, and it's got quite a nice interface. So if anybody wants to help with translations into other languages, I'd be very glad to let you loose.
Do we have any other questions? No, I might have one myself. It's a bit of a nerdy Irish question on the work by de Waldrege on the mappings between Edil and or Dil and what you may call it
Modern Irish.
O'Donnell.
Yeah.
You said you converted certain verb forms to other, I suppose 3 singular to 1 singular, but I didn't really get what you converted and from which way.
So I've converted. So in where is it? I've got it. It's right. Oh, I've got it in front of me. This wonderful volume as a penance for having messed up the Irish language by taking it away from its roots with the Caoimhín Ó Donnaíle abbreviated spelling. De Waldrege was forced to go through all 42,000 words of the DIL, reading through them, and with his wonderful knowledge of modern Irish, linking them to modern Irish equivalents. And maybe because the convention in Old Irish is to use the third singular, he used, so for instead of carty to correct, he would write cartion with a I fada ONN. And that's what I had, 15,000 of them. Well, no, just the verbs. So it's only about 4,000 or so verbs in that kind of third singular form. Meanwhile, I've got a big donation of data from Kevin Scannell, wonderful data linking mostly modern Irish to Manx. And that uses, like most people, it uses the imperative form, so carty instead of cartion. And sometimes I had words in twice, and then spent the last few days, I had to abandon it last night and prepare a bit for this talk. But I'm down to 200 hard cases I have to go through by hand, converting things like cartion to carty. So that's the kind of things you have to do and make sure you get right. And for Welsh, for example, there's sort of two conventions. Some people use, I think it's the first person singular, or is it the imperative? Don't know. No, first person singular, I think, is common in Welsh, but also the infinitive or verbal noun, or whatever it is, in Welsh. And that's what Wiktionary uses. Basically, I tend to go with Wiktionary, but that's something you have to be disciplined about. So it's not just linking words. You need a bit of discipline and rigor if you go properly. And
do you see any opportunities for linking inflected words? I think you touched on this. It's probably
I do, but to some extent, but not the fine-grained inflection, but more morphological word building, that kind of level of inflection. Yes, I do that. There's a lot of it for Irish because de Waldrege was including everything, and Caoimhín Scannell even more for Manx. Which makes things a bit cluttered. It's a bit difficult. So it would be nice to have nice to include it, but nice to have filtering facilities. I'm not quite sure how to filter some of it out when you don't want to see quite so much detail.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We have a question in the chat, or is it just a comment? It's Uskadir Yigit, if I pronounce that correctly. If you want, you can speak up, or I can read out the question.
We've tried converting the edge and node structure of cognate relations and cognate into Gephi-like relational network. No, I don't know about Gephi-like relational networks. So no, I don't know. No, I haven't tried anything other than what you see. Is it RDF form they call it when you've got sort of more direct word relations rather than these clusters that I go in for. The clusters are very nice for human interface and grouping similar types of relations together. They're nice for editing work, but they complicate the programming a bit. All this is available, by the way, if anybody really wants to get into duplicating it, cloning it, just talk to me. It's all online. The programs are in GitHub, and there's an online dump of the database from a few months ago and things like that. If I die, then it'll still be there. Somebody can continue the work, hopefully.
Okay. I hope that answered your question.
If anybody wants to write to me with ideas, I'd be very glad to talk to folk. Clusters of languages and their links. Yeah, I don't know about Gephi-like relational networks, I'm sorry.
Okay. Any final thoughts or questions?
Hey, I might, if are you able to hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
Hi, sorry, I jumped in late. Apologies if you have actually covered this. You were speaking about the Irish, the links to the Old Irish. I think you said you took the Old Irish from Edel, if I'm not mistaken.
De Valdrige went through 42,000, the whole of Edel, linking modern Irish words to it, and that's all in here, thanks to a student and thanks to Kevin Scannell, who also did the work, and we put the two together and corrected errors.
I see. So are you, or I should say, are you aware whether de Valdrige in that case omitted any middle and I suppose early modern Irish that would have existed in Edel from that, or was he just inclined to use it if it was in there? And the reason I say it is specifically the project that we're working with now uses the kind of ISO code system to identify languages, and as you'll know if you work with those, archaic Irish, Old Irish, Middle Irish, they're all different languages.
Yeah.
So whether we think that way or not.
Yes, de Valdrige was, well, he called it an Inyex Nua Gaeilge dun DIL, Dictionary of the Irish Language, which includes Middle Irish, as you said. Mm-hmm. So I reckon he was just linking to anything in DIL. He also read through the entries and linked to things in the middle of them as well. So it must have been a huge amount of work he did. And yes, it would be very nice to disentangle, quite important in the long run to disentangle Middle Irish and Old Irish, but no, I haven't done it. And I don't have the knowledge or the facilities. One thing I would really like to do though is go through DIL, and DIL is loads of links between words, be they Middle Irish or Old Irish, and other Irish words. So it's within Older Middle Irish, or they might link Middle Irish to the Old Irish form. And if somebody went through all that and linked them all, that would be great. It would have spin-off for the modern languages as well, because by linking Old Irish words to one another, you're linking modern Irish words and Scottish Gaelic words to one another. So that would be the main aim in the short run, but longer term, yeah, we'd need to somehow disentangle the Middle Irish. I don't know whether the new EDIL project will help to disentangle the two somehow.
Hopefully so, yeah, but thank you very much. That was very informative answer.
Wiktionary is starting to disentangle Middle Irish and Old Irish, but I ventured to some extent to using that. But any time I ventured in there tagging Middle Irish, I was getting ridiculous things. I was getting Old Irish words derived from Middle Irish, lots of cases of that. So in the end, decided leave it for the moment. SGA means dill. So that's the stage I'm at the moment.
Got it. Yeah, it's an interesting one, and I think it's probably a bit of a nebulous task trying to define exactly what is and isn't Middle Irish as opposed to Old. But I suppose I'm also aware that there's a lot of early modern Irish in dill.
Yeah. But it would take somebody more expert than me to disentangle it without having a nice, maybe Wiktionary, if enough people work on it, we'll do it, and then I'll just go follow Wiktionary.
All right, thanks very much.
Yeah, just a quick comment on that. I think EDL is going into a new funding phase where they actually go and do some work on, I thought, doing some temporal research into the dictionary. I'm not exactly sure what they're going to do. And on the book by de Waldere, he actually explains his method very clearly in that book. I think he takes the most recent entry, you know, if there's a Middle Irish or an early modern Irish entry, I think he goes for that one rather than the older Old Irish one, or maybe it's the opposite. But he does justify it in the introduction, but I can't remember exactly what it says from the top of my head.
Page and a half of rigour.
Yeah, and it's online, isn't it? Kevin Scannell also has the introduction
quite lightly
online.
Drochage, I think he calls it Drochage's system that where he put this online. Yeah, I think he has. Yeah,
I can copy the link. I think it's yeah, it's here. Where's my chat? Yeah. Anyway, is there? I'm aware that we're slightly over time, so if there's no further question, maybe.
Who's that? Oksana. If you can email me, if I can, anytime you're going to have some time to provide a Russian interface, I'd be very glad.
Yeah, sure. I'll send you an email about that.
Okay. And if Doris has got some time in his hands, sometime you can provide me with a Dutch one, and in return I'll start including Dutch words in the database.
I don't know how my Dutch is after 10 to 15 years in Ireland, but yeah, I'll do my best. Okay.
Doris, can I just jump in with one more question there, if that's all right, please? You mentioned that you were working with a lot of, I think it was third singular modern Irish verbal endings that O'Donnell used as a result, you think, of their usage in Old Irish.
De Waldere, yeah.
Oh, de Waldere. So have you replaced all of those now, or are you still working with them?
Over the last few days, I had finally got around to it, and I had a drive, and I've done them all except for, I was down to 200 at midnight last night, which I'll have to go through by hand, hard cases. I got some help from Kevin Scannell, who gave me various linked lists, and you have to be careful. When you go from the third singular, that's quite distinctive. So ceartian is obviously a verb, but cearti, it could be the, you get more homographs when you go to the imperative than you had when you were with the third singular. So that was the cause of the trouble. So a bit of hard work, but I'm mostly there.
Then what I'm going to say probably isn't going to be ideal. I was going to ask, had you done it manually, or were you doing it manually, or had you been using regular expressions? Because it occurs to me that it would be quite a simple regular expression to change all AIONN or IONN to.
It would, but at the same time, I was having to avoid homographs and bring in disambiguators if they were required. And sometimes I had a bit, in effect, I had the Irish word twice, once as an imperative and once as a third singular. So I had to amalgamate. So it wasn't automatic, but it was various MySQL or SQL queries. lots of
All right.
bit by bit.
Yeah, I'm thinking now as well, if you used Elaine's POS tagger or better morphological analyzer, you could just give the third singular forms and it spits out the lemma, which is the imperative. But as you say, you run into some disambiguation issues. Yeah,
Nearly there.
Okay. I think we'll probably bring this meeting to a close. So, Caoimhín, thank you very much for this enjoyable presentation, and we're hoping to be in contact,
Okay.
in some aspect of this work. And,
well, thanks for inviting me. Dank u wel.
Alsjeblieft. And yeah, thanks everybody for joining. We'll have a Cardamom meeting next month as well. It's the last Monday in March, and we'll announce a speaker shortly. So yeah, have a great evening and see you all soon.